forge a will for, say, a relatively small amount of money, say, $10,000 US, is it the same offence as he is in terms of, sort of 10 billion or 1 billion Hong Kong dollars? I don't quite know, because often in terms of the law, it depends a bit on how much money is involved. I'd be interested to know, with forging a will, if he's going to get in more trouble because it's such a large amount of money, or whether because in terms of morality, it shouldn't matter whether it was between someone who forged a will for a small amount of money and a large sum.
So you mean between stealing a bar of chocolate?
Right, yeah.
And stealing diamond.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know. Perhaps one of our listeners could email us and let us know if they've got any idea about that.
It won't be too long to tell. To see.
Yeah, we'll soon find out. Yeah, but I suspect he could get a heavier punishment because it is in the public eye, actually. And knowing how the judiciary works, sometimes they like to make an example of people. And certainly that judge was, he's had no doubt about it. He's decided that is a forgery, basically. And but you're right. I mean, it can turn around. Certainly, Nina Wang turned it around, and in her case, the Court of Final Appeal overturned the ruling, and so she wasn't prosecuted.
That's what I say is even more dramatic than lots of Hollywood films. I mean, you couldn't expect what it would be the next twist or what would be the next turn, and this is certainly what Tony Chan has in mind, probably, because as we know this week, he was the police went to his house in the Peak and got the laptop and other documents to see whether there are evidence that he forged the will. So I think it's quite unlikely that Tony Chan will stop his fight right now, and
he's got no choice but to appeal, really, hasn't he?
Yeah. Actually, he told the reporters yesterday that originally he was planning to, just like you met, to go abroad during the Chinese New Year of the Tiger and to take a break overseas. But he said that based on the news development lately, he will stay here and discuss with his lawyers for the next step, about the next step. So that won't be too soon. I think.
I mean, it begs the question, quite what he was thinking, actually. Let's just hypothesize and say, he did forge that will. I mean, what quite was he thinking to do it, actually? Because obviously she had given him quite a large sum of money anyway, hadn't she, before, the will came along. And obviously, I think, I've got a feeling most Hong Kong people feel is obviously a case of excessive greed, isn't it? If he should have perhaps been happy with what he got, and he could have seen the trouble ahead. But it may be that his lawyers gave him bad advice, actually, because sometimes these lawyers, they would be saying, yeah, you can win, and so on, to encourage him. It may be a case of that a bit as well, because I'm sure that his lawyers obviously, want their fees and so on, and would like to see a nice big court case and so on. But I mean, what do you make of the guy in terms of that? Do you think he was, it's a case of excessive greed and and a bit of stupidity as well?
Oh, that's right. I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's what the public used to comment on the guy. I mean, if you talk to most people in Hong Kong, I don't know about you, Ken, but if you talk to most people in Hong Kong, I don't think they had much sympathy at all for Tony Chan, right?
No, not at all. And I think I agree with Matt. The big winners are the lawyers, aren't they?
They always are, aren't they?
Both sides, they got a huge amount of money. Yeah. And also they've been on the stage for 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Big money. Yeah, and obviously the other big winner is the family of of Nina Wang, in terms of her particularly her brother and the other relatives, obviously, who are in control of the charity, the China Chan Foundation. And let's face it. Okay, I think most people would say it's a good thing that it's going to charity, but it's not quite clear. It doesn't seem that clear cut to me that, okay, but this charity also has its own sort of, and that the family have their own sort of vested interest and agenda, don't they? So, but anyway, that story is going to run, isn't it? But I think we ought to move on. We talk a bit about the other, big political news that since our last show, in that the 5 pro-democracy lawmakers have resigned since our last show. They've actually done it, and that was big news as well internationally. Actually, I looked at some of the websites in different parts of the world, and that was pretty big news actually. So in terms of that impact around the world, it had that impact actually. It was interesting to kind of to see that immediate impact. I mean, did you what do you think of that? And also it was interesting that the DAB, the biggest pro-government party, about how they reacted actually, because obviously there was meant to be some speeches, resignation speeches by the 5 lawmakers, and the DAB basically walked out of the Legislative Council meeting and it was abandoned. Did you get? I mean, what do you think about the way they reacted to it and so on?
First of all, I think it was quite ironic that for a long time the DAB legislative members, when they were in the legislature, they used to condemn long hair and other LSD members for shouting, boycotting or walking out and shouting, that sort of behavior. But when we look at the pro-government legislators' behavior that day, they not only walked out, but also Wang, one of the legislators, also shouted, calling the de facto referendum a shame, and even accusing the resigned lawmakers as in the separatists of Hong Kong, as to quote them. So they were just shouting as I think he even appeared more radical than Longhair himself. But they used to condemn those sort of behavior. So I think it was quite ironic that they repeated the same.
Yeah, I mean that just about. I mean that's politics for you, isn't it? And I mean. Just the point about that he was shouting, saying that these guys were fighting for Hong Kong independence. I mean that's just rubbish, isn't it? You know, the democracy legislators, the movement in Hong Kong, they're not fighting for an independent country for Hong Kong. You know, they're fighting for democracy for Hong Kong and the whole of China, basically. And that's
basically the argument is that they were also, for the guy who was shouting, Wang Guoheng, he also mentioned a bit about the use of the term uprising, hei yi. And then this caused a lot of debate these days. Particularly, this gave the Liberal Party and also the DAB quite a good excuse to not to join the de facto referendum, because uprising. I mean, it sort of changed the nature of the de facto referendum. It called for uprising, military or sort of a violent uprising